His Last Bow, written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, is one in a series of 8 short stories that make up an entire collection called His Last Bow. These are all the Sherlock Holmes mystery-esque sort of take on writing. This one's actually told by Dr. Watson in the third-person perspective. Dr. Watson is the assistant to Sherlock Holmes. Well, His Last Bow has a series of characters. First, there's von Bork, a German agent who's getting ready to flee England. He has a house and a family and a wife, but they've already left and escaped to the Netherlands in a town called Flushing. He's alone with his elderly housekeeper. He has a friend whose name is Baron von Herling, and they're with a series of British toasts. There also is an Irish informant. His name is Altamont. He arrives about halfway through the story. And then there are Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson themselves because they're the storytellers of this story. And Watson turns out to be one of the most important because he's telling the story in his own third-person perspective. So, His Last Bow. The setting is the First World War in England. It takes place in August at night, and in fact, the short story says it was the most terrible August in the history of the world. We meet von Bork, who is a devoted agent to Germany to Kaiser. He has a friend with him whose name is Baron von Herling, who is the chief secretary to the Legion, and they're talking about how von Bork is going to flee England. They talk about him leaving and the recent events that take place in England. Then they enter the study of the house. We learn that von Bork's wife and children have left the day before, and they've taken some of the minor, less significantly important paperwork with them. There's a war with England, as we said. It's in the First World War, so they're talking about France and Belgium and how England is going to leave them to their own devices and how they believe France will actually end her own fate. And they start making predictions of what they believe the outcome will be. We learn that von Bork only has one person with him in the household, Martha, an elderly woman. She has a cat. And then a car pulls up to the house. We learn that this is Altamont, who is a 60-year-old Irish-American who they say looks like Uncle Sam. They talk about James, Jack, and Steiner, who they were all captured and found out to be agents. Von Bork pays Altamont $500 for a book that we learned is called The Practical Handbook of Bee Culture. Von Bork actually only looks at the book. It's blue and it has gold writing. He only looks at it for a second, and then a hand covers his mouth with chloroform, which makes him knock out cold and go to sleep. Then Holmes and Watson enter the scene. Sherlock Holmes discovers von Bork in his house, and he tells Martha that he's okay, he's not dead or anything. Martha tells Sherlock Holmes and Watson what she knows, that there was a car came and there was a check, but that's all she knows. And then Sherlock Holmes tells her that if she remembers anything else, he gives her his address at the hotel he's staying at if she remembers anything. Von Bork wakes up out of his stupor and he swears vengeance on Altamont. He said the dirty, dirty liar, and he swears vengeance that he'll get him. Von Bork and Holmes talk about what happened and all the recent events, but Holmes never actually says who he is. Von Bork figures it out by the clues that Sherlock Holmes says. I won't tell you the ending, but I will tell you that Sherlock Holmes and Watson left with a $500 check. How they got it? You'll have to read the story for yourself. So, my view on the short story, His Last Bow. I give it an overall 4 out of 5. It was definitely a good story to read. It kept you interested. Sherlock Holmes is always interesting. It had an old-school film noir feel to it. It kept you interested with the who did what, how did this happen sort of deal. So I would definitely read it if you like mysteries or if you like old-school novels. It had a good plot and a good ending to it, so I would definitely recommend it to anyone.